Welcome back. Chapter 20, the last chapter of I Did It For You. Ryan had been wrong. Dean had a faint pulse under my fingers, a weak groan when I turned him over. My voice hoarse as I called for an ambulance. My hands pressed my jacket hard into his wound until the paramedics pulled me aside. And then me being ushered into Sheriff Baker's cruiser, turning my face away when they wheeled Ryan out in a black body bag. It all felt very remote, like it was happening to a woman who looked like me, sounded like me, but had nothing at all to do with me. I knew it would wear off though, and I dreaded the reckoning. I expected to be taken to the police station, so I was surprised when Baker pulled up at the hospital in Neosho. He must have registered my confusion when he opened the door and helped me out of the cruiser. "Your arm, sweetheart," he said. I looked down, saw blood dripping off the ends of my fingers, vaguely remembering pain when I reached for Ryan. A nurse helped me take off my ripped shirt, clean the jagged, deep gash on my upper inner arm, a glimpse of muscle, flecks of rust embedded in the wound before I closed my eyes. They gave me a tetanus shot before a doctor arrived to sew me up. A long needle, 30 stitches, and I never flinched. Not because I was brave, but because I still wasn't feeling anything. A blissful numbness I wanted to float in forever. After they were done with my arm and had gotten me back in my clothes, they put me in a room by myself, a hot cup of coffee on the table that I couldn't lift to my lips without spilling. I sat on my hands in an attempt to still their shaking. When Baker joined me, he brought a blanket, draped it gently across my shoulders before he sat down across from me. "Your mother is here," he said, waited. "She can come in," I told him. I was so tired of lying, and it was better to do this once. Flay myself open with a single swipe of a sword rather than die by 1,000 smaller cuts. Okay. When Baker opened the door, my mother rushed inside, took the seat next to me, and cradled my face in her battered hands. "Oh, my sweet girl," she said, "I'm right here. I'm here." I wondered if she still would be once I was done talking. Baker took me through it slowly, making notes even though every word I said was being recorded. My mom made noises sometimes, involuntary gasps or signs, but never interrupted. When we got to Roy and me, Baker's pen paused and he raised his eyes to mine. I resisted the urge to look away. I told it all, and I spared no one, especially not myself. There was relief in saying the words, in no longer keeping a dark and festering secret, one that was slowly eating me alive. Next to me, my mother had gone very still. I couldn't look at her. "Greer," Baker said when I was finished. "It wasn't, don't," I said harsh. "Don't tell me it wasn't my fault." "Okay, I won't say that. But I'm going to say something, and you're going to listen." I looked down at my hands. I had blood underneath my nails and embedded in the creases of my knuckles. Dean's blood, my blood. I could feel the numbness receding, and I tried to chase it, but it moved too fast for me. A sharp pain exploded in my chest. "I already knew about you and Roy," Baker said. "I always knew." My head shot up. I couldn't breathe. All the air backed up into my lungs. "What are you talking about?" I whispered. "I saw you that summer. You think something like that goes on in my town and I'm not going to know about it, sweetheart? That I'm not going to keep tabs? Come on now," he said, voice gentle. "You know me better than that." Why didn't you ever say anything?" I asked. Baker glanced at my mom with an apology in his eyes and then back to me. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I knew you didn't have anything to do with the murders. We had Roy, the gun, the confession. So I thought, why stir it all up? Make everything worse. It would have just muddied the waters and you were barely holding on as it was. But I see now that was a mistake. I should have helped you unburden yourself because you wanted me to, didn't you?" Way back then when you wouldn't stop pressing? You wanted someone to figure it out about you and Roy, hold you to account. I nodded without speaking, tears dripping off my chin. Baker sighed, a long, mournful breath. I'm sorry I let you down. I wish I paid more attention, understood what you were trying to tell me, and maybe if I'd done that instead of dismissing you, I could have figured out what Ryan was up to before he had a chance to do it again. That's on me, and it always will be. But whatever part of the fault for this is yours, and we can go back and forth on that all day, you've paid for it 100 times over. He tapped the back of my hand with his fingers hard. Are you hearing me? Yes, I managed. You've paid, Greer, and now it really is time to let it go. He put pressure on my hand until I looked at him. If you don't, if you can't, then you might as well have jumped with him, and that would be a goddamn shame. I risked a glance at my mom, then wished I hadn't. Tears coursed down her cheeks. I tried never to imagine this moment, mainly because when I did, I could picture clearly the horror on my mother's face, how bad the final rejection would sting, even after all the years of warm-up. I braced myself when she opened her mouth, steeling myself for what would come out. Why didn't you tell us? She asked. All this time and you never said a word. I struggled to speak, my throat tight. I didn't know how. Is this the reason you haven't come home for so long? Pushed us away? Never wanted to talk about Eliza? Her words hit me like an electric shock, a sudden sharp jab to my heart. All this time, I told myself the distance between us was what they wanted, the erasing of Eliza, what they'd chosen. But really, it had started with me, hadn't it? My resentment and denial, a shield I held between us so they would never get close enough to find out the truth. I didn't want you to hate me, I whispered. Oh, Greer, we could never hate you. She reached for my hand, folded them into her own. Her touch was gentle, her face soft. It broke something inside me, something brittle and hard that had needed smashing for years. You shouldn't have carried it alone. It was too much for one person. She lifted our clasped hand and kissed my knuckles. She glanced at Baker. Like he said, it's time to let it go. I knew she was right, even though a part of me wanted to cling to my burden, its weight a kind of comfort. Who would I be without it? I had no idea anymore. But what I'd been carrying was too heavy. In order to keep moving forward, I had to set some of it down. I pushed the push of pain and the pull of love, shame and forgiveness, past and future. Maybe now it was up to me to decide which way I wanted to go. Maybe it always had been. Okay, excuse me. When my mom and I got home, Cassie was waiting on my front steps, her face swollen from tears. She launched herself at me as soon as I was within grasping distance, her arms so tight around me I could barely inhale. My mom laid a hand on my shoulder as she passed, shutting the door softly behind her as she went inside. Is it true? Cassie asked. And then before I could answer, I know it is, but I can't make myself believe it. We lowered ourselves onto the front steps again, the sun barely beginning to rise over the treetops, turning the air sugary pink. Are you okay? Cassie asked. Did he hurt you? No, he hurt Dean though. Dean's in the hospital? I nodded. I waited for a few hours, but they ended up moving him to Wichita. Last they told me he's in surgery. Baker promised to call me as soon as they know anything more. Did Ryan say why he did it? Cassie asked after a minute of silence. He would say it was because I needed him to. It was the simplest answer and the most painful one. That's such a load of crap, Cassie said, voice harsh. You know that, right? Please tell me you know that. I'm trying to know it, I said, and I was trying to tell myself that it was really all about Ryan, his need to protect, his need to guard a friendship he thought was in peril, his need to control. After I heard, I started thinking back, going over that summer. Remember how Samantha Leary accused me of slashing her tires and I thought she was crazy, so I broke up with her? Cassie asked, do you think it could have been Ryan? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. He didn't like the way she treated you. He could have been trying to protect you in his own spectacular, fucked up way. I keep picking things apart, like how he always so obsessive with us being happy, worrying every time I went through a breakup, taking it harder than I did half the time. And he'd called me after he visited you in Chicago, ranting about how sad you were, trying to figure out a way to fix it. Looking back, it was over the top. If it had been anyone else, it probably would have set off alarm bells. But it was Ryan. He'd always been overprotective. I never thought. I know, I said, my voice breaking. I never did either. That's what we do for the people we love. We make allowances and excuses. We look past what's right in front of us in hopes we'll see something better. We spent so much time with him. How did we not know? Because we didn't want to. Because we loved him. I paused, took a deep breath, stinging breath. The worst part is, I still do. Cassie laid her hand on my shoulder. I do too. And I missed him already. Knew I'd live every day after this with a Ryan-shaped hole in my heart. Would ache to hear his easy laugh, see his lopsided grin as long as I drew breath. Nothing he'd done was enough to erase the love for him that still lived inside me, as real as organ and bone. None of it makes sense, Cassie whispered, almost to herself. Across the street, the wind picked up a swirl of leaves, sending them dancing along the sidewalk. All these years, I expected that if I ever found out the real reason Eliza died, it would be something worthy of her passing. Something as big as her loss had been. Something that gave it meaning. But all I discovered was that the reason for a murder was almost never something earth-shattering. More often than not, it was something trivial. Something so stupid and meaningless that you could hardly fathom how it would warrant the taking of a life. 6 people gone because I picked a random Wednesday night to go to the refinery and ran into an angry boy throwing bottles. Lives ruined because my friend felt entitled to save me, to kill to save me, when I never asked for rescue. Dreams shattered because my sister discovered a secret she refused to keep buried. All of it so mundane, really, that the truth of it broke my heart all over again. Oh, I was baking cookies with my mom when they called to tell me Dean was able to have visitors. It had been 2 days since the shooting, 2 days of waiting for him to be stable enough for me to see him. Go, my mom said as soon as I got off the phone. I'll finish up here. We've been spending more time together the last few days. Hours when she stopped cleaning, put down her bucket and mop and picked up a recipe, or we sat together reading on the front porch. She still cleaned more than she needed to, but at the end of the day, she let me put lotion on her slightly less battered skin. Sometimes we talked about Eliza. Our initial tentative reminiscence soon giving way to a torrent of memories. With every shared story, I gave myself permission to grieve my sister in a way I never had before, without guilt and shame layered over the top of the hurt. It was simply sorrow now, and I let myself feel it. Each memory an exquisite pain rippling outward into joy. I laughed and cried and allowed my mother to wipe away my tears. Slowly, carefully, we were navigating our way into being mother and daughter again. On my way out of the house, I peeked into the family room. My dad was asleep in his recliner, and I stopped to cover his legs with a blanket from the back of the sofa. I could smell bourbon on his breath, but there wasn't an open bottle beside him. I mentioned AA to him last night. Told him there was a meeting every Thursday evening in the basement of the Methodist church. He hadn't said he'd go, but he hadn't told me to fuck off either. I guess that was our version of progress. My parents and I weren't going to heal one another overnight, or maybe ever. Forgiveness would come in baby steps, for me and for them. But I could stand the thought of seeing them now and of letting myself be seen, of being their daughter again. I had some hope for better in the future. It reminded me of one of those sayings on Eliza's garbage wall. It's not the destination, it's the journey. God, I'd given her a special kind of hell about that one. Of course it's the destination, I told her. If you're going on vacation to New York City, you don't give a shit about the flight. She only rolled her eyes at me. That was one thing Eliza. She never wasted her breath arguing when I was being an intentional pain in the ass. And the truth was, I still thought her wall was garbage. I still didn't really believe most of the crap she had up there. But I was trying. We all were. Dean was sleeping when I got to his room, his face pale and his hands crossed lightly on his chest. I grabbed the chair next to his bed, dragging it closely, as quietly as I could, and took one of his hands in mine. His skin was warm, callous, exactly how I remembered. Baker told me he'd been shot in the stomach. Sheer luck that bullet had missed any other major organs. The fall down the steps had dislocated his right shoulder, left him with a concussion, and caused any number of bruises and cuts. But he was going to survive, despite Ryan's best efforts. I lowered my forehead to our clasped hands, searching for the scent of wheat or sweat. But all I got was hospital soap and a sterile whiff of antiseptic. Hey, his voice was scratchy, as if he hadn't spoken much in years instead of only a few days. My head snapped up. Hey, I said. I let go of his hand to brush a errant tear off my cheek, hoping he hadn't noticed. He turned his palm towards me, reaching for my fingers again. Guess I should have listened to those hand squeezes you were giving me in the refinery, huh? I choked out a little laugh. Men, so stubborn. How are you feeling? Like I got shot and thrown down a flight of stairs? He gave me a half smile. What about you? I'm fine, I said, but my voice wobbled and I glanced away. Are you? He tightened his grip on my hand. I heard about Ryan. I shook my head, bit down on my bottom lip. I know I should hate him, and part of me does, but the other part? I paused. He was my friend for a long time, a good friend, the best, really. No matter how much I try, I can't forget that. Don't be hard on yourself. Your history with him doesn't disappear just because of what he did. I knew Dean understood more than anyone exactly how love and hate for someone could form a perfect knot inside you, forever entwined. I wished I'd been kinder to him when he tried to explain his feelings about Roy's death. Wish I could have taken a step back from my own grief and anger and really seen what he was trying to show me. Been gentler with his pain. I'm sorry for not telling you about Roy and me earlier, for me not speaking up before his trial. If I had, maybe things would have been different for him. When I voiced these thoughts to Cassie, she assured me it wouldn't have changed the outcome, that at the end of the day, the fact remained that Roy had been the one to kill Eliza and Travis. I knew Cassie meant well, but the truth was, we never know for sure whether my silence helped cost a man his life. I doubt it would have made a difference, Dean said. If Roy had wanted people to know about the two of you, if he felt like it mattered in the long run, he would have spoken up. For whatever reason, he didn't want to put you through that. He was protecting you, and it was his choice. But how much choice does someone have in a situation like Roy's, especially someone not very bright and loyal to his core? Who's done something awful and already fallen on the sword? Does it matter to anyone what might have caused it? what portion of the blame might rightfully belong to someone else, what the reason might have been, faulty as they were. I know back then it hadn't mattered to me. You were right, I told Dean. That day on the bench, they're all still gone. Nothing we discovered changed that. I squeezed his hand, but I hope it helps a little, the knowing. It does, he said. I'm a work in progress, but seeing the whole picture? He gave a careful shrug. I still wish I'd done more, paid more attention to Roy that summer. I doubt that will ever go away, but having answers, even painful ones, eases something for me. I'm glad. I swallowed hard, not trusting my voice. I went to Roy's grave yesterday. You did? Why? I owed it to him. I stood on that barren patch of dirt and let myself remember Roy in a way I hadn't allowed myself to do since the day he'd been arrested. He was a murderer, but he was more than that too. He had a family and a life. He loved and been loved, and he meant something to me once in a way I would never be able to fully articulate. Those things didn't cancel each other out. They didn't mean I forgave him or that I'd ever understand his choices, but I couldn't find it in myself to hate him anymore. I let go of Dean's hand and reached up. Excuse me. Sorry. I let go of Dean's hand and reached up, ran my fingers along his cheek, felt the wraps of his stubble under my skin. And I owe it to you, I whispered. Owe it to this man who could have easily turned away from me, but held my hand instead. He shifted his head and kissed my palm. Hold on, it ain't going nowhere. I'm back. He shifted his head and kissed my palm, and I stood up, bent over him, and rested my forehead against his. We stayed that way for a moment, eyes closed, breathing in unison, and then he threaded his hand through my hair and brought his mouth to mine. This time when we kissed, there was only Dean behind my closed eyelids, no one else. Seeing him for the first time in the courtroom, stiff and tense in his ill-fitted suit, sitting beside him on the memorial bench in the dying twilight. Riding next to him on Ludlow's back roads, searching for answers. Lying beneath his warm body on the cold floor of the refinery, his laugh, his furrowed brows, his strong hands, his undenying resilience when it would have been easier to simply give up. A tear ran down my cheek, and I tasted it on his tongue. He pulled back a little and looked at me, brushing his fingers under my eyes, and caught my next tear before it fell. In another life, we could have really been something, he whispered. Yes, I said, and nothing more, because after everything, what else was there to say? We were two parts of the same broken whole, but there was no way to piece us together. No way the shape we formed made any kind of sense. I wonder what might have been if Dean had been the boy I met in the refinery that long ago summer day. How different our lives might have turned out to be. When I sat back down, he took my hand again, ran his thumb across my knuckles. So what's next for you? He asked, voice hoarse. I don't know exactly. I'm going back to Chicago in a few days. Cassie is coming with me for a week or two. It's her mission to help me turn my plain apartment into something Greer-worthy, whatever that means. It's been a long time since I thought about it. I paused. I'll be back for Christmas, though. When I asked my mom if that would be okay, she burst into tears and flapped her hands helplessly, laughing a little at her own reaction. Ludlow would never be the magical, uncomplicated home of my childhood, but it could still be a place where I belonged, a place where the bad no longer eclipsed the good, but simply lived alongside it. Come back. It was a gentle murmur now, filled with the best kind of possibilities. And your job? I'm not sure about that either. I think I'll finish this school year before I decide. I still don't know if I like it or even if I'm any good at it. but I've never put my heart into it, not really. I figured maybe I'll give it a try. I shrugged, see how it goes. And now I had something more to offer the kids, didn't I? My honesty left me messy and raw, but maybe that's what they needed. My understanding of the foibles of youth and the shame of bad decisions, the healing power of forgiveness, especially for yourself. To see that even after the worst kind of mistakes, life can go on. Dean smiled. I think you've always been better at it than you give yourself credit for. But now those kids better buckle up. They won't know what hit them when they finally meet the real Greer Dunning. You're going to be amazing. I smiled back, lips trembling. What about you? I managed. Once you're healed? He sighed, tipping his gaze up to the ceiling. I guess I'll keep on keeping on. Take care of my grandma as well as I can for as long as I can. Work on a farm and wait to see what life throws at me. I hope it's something good, I told him, voice fierce, like I was daring the universe to contradict me. I never meant anything more in my life. He laughed slightly, the movement making him wince. Yeah, you and me both. When I left his room, I didn't linger. See you later, I said from the doorway, one hand raised in farewell. I was trying to memorize his face, the lines fanning out from his eyes when he smiled, the exact shade of brown in his hair. Goodbye, Greer, Dean said. He was the first to look away, just so I wouldn't have to. I paused on the sidewalk outside the hospital, scrubbed at my cheeks with both hands, then wiped my tears on my jeans. Out on the street, a car glided past. I caught my fingers reaching for my inner arm, and I barely resisted the urge to scratch under the bandage where my stitches was prickling, my skin slowly knitting back together. I tucked my hands into my pockets instead, tilted my head back, and felt the warm sun on my face. The light was pure gold, spilling down through magnetic hue leaves to puddle at my feet. I closed my eyes, the scent of apple pie flooded my memory, and took a deep breath. The seasons are changing, I whispered. My wound is healing. I am alive. It was enough. And that's the end of chapter 20 and the end of I Did It For You. Okay, so I'm going to leave everything that I have to say about this book to the live discussion that is scheduled for Friday, May the 23rd, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm going to try it on StreamYard because I would like the people who read this book along with me and had some input to join me on camera. So I'm going to start it on StreamYard and see how that goes. If it doesn't work, then I'm going to go to YouTube Live, and I don't know if I can have people join that, but I'm just going to say for this video, 2 thumbs up. And if you plan on attending the live, I shall see you Friday. Bye for now.